Good afternoon and welcome to Cracking Crypto, where we break down the projects in the Web3 ecosystem that are changing how we view finance. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Now, before we get stuck in, let's take a look across those, frankly, very impressive crypto markets. Crypto markets as a whole now toying with the $1 trillion total market cap, as Bitcoin appears to be holding gains, at least for the time being. The latest surges seeing the prime coins settle around the $21,000 level. And alts, as you can see there as well, ETH is sitting at an impressive level in the mid 1500s. Binance just flirting with that $300 level. XRP and Cardano also seeing overall gains, although as we can see there, some minor pullbacks in the last couple of hours, but really nothing compared to the surges that we have seen over the last couple of weeks, really, at this stage. Meanwhile, on-chain analysts detected large movements from the wallets tied to suspected North Korean hackers that stole about $100 million in crypto from the Horizon cross-chain bridge in June last year. At the time, the money was laundered via Tornado Cash, a popular crypto mixer, and spread among many wallets. Blockchain forensic firms traced the Harmony hackers to Lazarus, a well-known North Korean hacking group associated with the country's regime. All right, and just a simple tweet for us today to look over before we turn to our guest, but asking a very relevant question. This coming from Cointelegraph, putting out a poll asking a bull run or a bull trap. And the majority seem to be believing that this is a bull trap. But as we well know, perhaps that shared agreement in sentiment that it is a bull trap may be a strong indicator that bull run really has taken hold. But I don't know the answer to that question, so let's instead turn to our guest for today. And joining us is Tom Ciszewski from Trovio. Tom, firstly, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Asher.
All right, Tom, let's kick it off with that question as so pointedly asked there in the poll by Cointelegraph. Bull run, bull trap, what's your take?
I'm going to avoid a exact answer, but I will say that it's been quite an impressive rally to start the year. We're up almost 30% in both Ethereum and Bitcoin. And no matter how you look at it, it's a risk on in digital assets. So right now, clearly is a bull run. When we were looking in December at much shakier times, the price is relatively stable. And I think one thing to really note that, during this run that we've had so far in 2023, this has come on a higher volume period, the most volume since we had since the FTX blew up in early November, but also coming out of the lowest realized volatility period in Bitcoin and Ethereum's history. So we were a week ago, or a little more than a week ago, the 10-day realized vol was sub 10. It's really just not moving. So we kind of had a floor, I think, established in at least the major digital assets. And then with a little bit of positive buying, it's definitely appears to me be a bull run, but I'm still going to evade and don't be locked into that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, a potential for change out there. And this is something that I think a lot of analysts have been coming out to sort of mention here, which a lot pointing out to the fact that the fundamentals haven't really shifted thus far, in the lead up to this this upswing, and now from where we're standing right now, which many say is an excuse to suggest that it could pull back somewhat. I mean, others, certain analysts even coming out and suggesting that the bottom overall in the market, that sort of 15,500 that was hit late last year, may actually not yet be in. There might be further sinking from there. Do you think that seems feasible or likely from this point? Or at least have we laid some new foundations here?
I think to tip us back much lower and to make new lows will have to be done on either really poor macro news sentiment, so a very stronger risk-off environment, which we're getting also headwinds from the overall macro environment. And so this past week is the first time in almost 3 years where both Bitcoin breached to the upside, its 200-day moving average, and the S&P 500 did. And it's something that really, they haven't been aligned in kind of the upside volatility and upside positive price momentum in a long time. So if we continue to get the macro headwinds shifting our way, which is kind of looking like we've hit peak rates, which is about 50 bips more of rate hikes in the US over the next 6 months, And then I don't think I'm not quite as optimistic that we'll get cuts this year or even in early 24, but the market's certainly pricing that in. And all of those, kind of factors are having this improbable uh, outlook that we might have this softest landing, where the Fed and other central banks around the world have engineered a 500 bip rate increase over a very short period of time, but haven't pushed us into a deep recession. I think if that happens, then equities will continue to be strong. And if we're risk on, it's hard to see why digital assets are going to fall back into that lower price period. The other big thing I think we're still waiting on, which has caused a lot of delays in investment so far this year, is still the unsettlement of Gemini, Genesis, and Barry Seibert's company. Those are still big clouds on the horizon that we need to kind of figure out. But I think without a really poor news story from those sources, it's hard to see why we're gonna retest the lows unless we have a very poor macro environment.
Yeah, and you really raise the two sides of the coin there when it comes to movement in the crypto space. That macro correlation, in particular S&P, the Nasdaq, in particular, obviously that alignment with tech stocks. Seeing that correlation reform when it comes to crypto markets. But on the flip side of that, the internal news within the crypto space that's driving movements. Obviously, FTX being the huge driver towards the latter half of 2022. But do you think those correlations will continue to play out within the space? And what, I guess, when it comes to the balance of correlative movement, what's more powerful? Is it an inside the game movement, or is it those wider macro market movements that are going to really impact the crypto space?
Yeah, I mean, we're still like the effects of FTX and the shock of it, of having really not the biggest, but one of the most renowned global exchanges, and certainly what some people figured at the time was the face of crypto in SBF, of him being a fraud. Yeah, I think that took something out of question the whole ecosystem. Now, as we move farther away from the news event, we're realizing that SBF was just one part of the larger ecosystem, but not the main component. And so even, the minor potentially positive news that Japanese investors might be recovering their assets from FTX very quickly, or that they might have found more money and probably somewhere else in their ecosystem to pay back investors, is starting to realize, okay, FTX was one off a really horrible risk management, fraud, bad accounting story. But the markets can survive that, as we survived Enron and WorldCom in previous tech market cycles. I think what we're really positive on is the adoption still of Bitcoin, Ethereum, layer twos to Ethereum that are kind of driving future adoption. And then if there really is something to blockchain technology, which certainly we believe that's just a natural course of the digitalization of assets, then a lot has to move up. And I think overall, you look at the price levels right here, we're just trying to get back to where we were pre-FTX blow. So if we are successful in doing that, yeah, I think it's very positive. I think one thing too, trying to what I said in my previous statement is having this upside volatility versus downside volatility shows that we still have a big FOMO effect here. That all of a sudden, where you're waiting for clouds or kind of some positive affirmation for the market to go higher, that's driving in more buying. And that we did hit newer lows, we weren't necessarily getting newer and larger sellers. So yeah, I think so. Right now, the correlation sure will still be there, somewhat on the overall downside. But as I was telling you last year, I think it's very positive to upside moves that we're going to see digital assets outperformance beta on the upside and just be in line on the downside.
So then I suppose I wonder, what impact do you think that the sort of liquidity crunches that have been happening across the crypto space may be having on this market? Obviously, we saw so many people remove their coins off exchanges, put them off into cold storage, both at the retail and institutional level, really getting out as that fear crept into so much of the market last year with all the contagion effects and concerns that people were worried about. Is that what we're seeing the impact of now? There's just less coins circulating, therefore perhaps a potential for higher buying?
I think it's definitely having an effect. And you raise a great point, Asher. Here at Trovio, we look at a lot of those technical factors. And even in this last been very key in this last Bitcoin run up, even Friday afternoon in the US, which was Saturday morning here in Australia, where we had the large purchase of somewhat's estimated to be close to 5 billion of Bitcoin happening in a very illiquid time, and even in bigger and illiquid time in the market. So smaller amount of flows can have really big price impact. And I think that's consistent. You can look at market depth. Market depth is still the lowest it's been in a long time, a number of years. So that, yes, it definitely is adding to price moves when you have directional shifts one way. And I think that is added to the current run up. And you see it also in, having a healthy derivatives market that allows people to go long and short is very good for the overall ecosystem. And outside of probably Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's still not very healthy. Like, even though Solana is now almost gained 100% from its lows, I think over 100% now from its lows, it's very hard to short, and it's hard to get, can be very expensive, both on negative performance and having a short squeeze, which is currently happening. So I think we still need those kind of factors to add to be a healthier market, because in the end, I think especially with smaller digital assets, it's still a developing market. I think Bitcoin and Ethereum also having markets on the CME and futures, that's very powerful. But the rest of the ecosystem is still in a developing state.
And I want to bring that rest of that ecosystem into the conversation a little bit here, because obviously, we're talking about the drivers in the major alts, in Bitcoin itself, in Ethereum, these big established networks that at this stage, really do have a solid foundation, even during the worst of times. But if we look a little further down the list when it comes to more minor alts, when we look at certain meme coins, and even then going beyond the sort of traditional cryptocurrencies into NFT projects, that might be taking place, are we seeing that same level of enthusiasm returning to those spaces, and that sort of risk-on sentiment? Has it bled that far down the line yet, or is it still sitting with the majors?
It's hard to say without positive news stories on each of those. When we have the meme tokens go up without a positive use case, it's hard for us to make that investable. And here at Trovio, we don't invest in those assets, certainly for our long fund, just because of that, because they don't have positive use cases. And a lot of even Bitcoin, Ethereum is still proving out its use cases. And as it does and it becomes more viable, other layer twos on top of it, such as Algorand, Matic, Cosmos, with the Shanghai upgrade coming with Lido, there's a lot more use cases where we see those coins performing very well. But we're still in the development stage. Like a lot of these projects aren't accretive quite yet, but it can happen very quickly. So I think the market, if we go back 90 days, what's led the market is still Bitcoin being up 9%, Ethereum being up 18%, which is pretty powerful, where a lot of these altcoins that have rallied incredibly from its lows are still down 20% from its 3-month ago price.
And Tom, if we are to see new money entering into the crypto space, or sort of new money being activated in the space, where do you think it's going to be coming from? Are we talking retail, institutional, governmental? I mean, where would this money actually be coming from?
I still think it's institutional investors, and I think it's institutional investors that, even with the very shaky end of 2022, did not give up on Bitcoin and Ethereum, certainly, and are looking ways that they can provide access to their clients to invest. And that's what we provide here at Trovio, is a secure means and smartly risk-managed products that you can get access to digital assets. And I think there is demand there from institutions to have that. So yeah, I think it's definitely be driven the next leg up, even though we have these really strong rallies, which might have a retail component. I don't think until we get a return to the centralized exchanges, which still assets are coming off centralized exchanges, they've become a little bit more stable last week, but still for the last 6 weeks have all left the exchanges. It's hard to see this is going to be a really retail-driven type run-up. And overall, because of you see Bitcoin still being held in cold wallets off exchanges, that's really positive, because that means it's not being traded, it's being accumulated.
All right, well, certainly there is a lot to the market right now, and it's really come starkly back into the attention and focus of so much of the overall space. It'll be very interesting to see how this all develops over the next several weeks and whether this run-up truly is sustainable or not. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank you, Tom Ciszewski from Trovio, for taking the time to speak with us today.
Great. Thanks, Asher.
All right, well, that is all we have time for today on Cracking Crypto, but there'll be plenty more news out this week with the market continuing to move in a high volatility direction. So much to make sure you're watching, so check us out at the same time every weekday here for Cracking Crypto. In the meantime, I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.